was an All-Pro for 6 years during his 13-year career. He went to college in West Virginia. He was a 5-sport letterman 4 years in a row. He was my original teammate back in 1961. He is a great friend of mine. He's a friend of the Cowboys. Without further ado, Chuck Howley.
One time, I told Tom Landry, I said, what Cowboy is the most deserving of being in the Hall of Fame who's not in there? And he said, Chuck Howley.
The Hall of Fame is interesting because I could look at a lot of guys and tell you that I'm shocked that they're in.
Chuck Howley to the 50.
But Chuck is a guy who, there's no question he deserves to be in.
And it is intercepted by Chuck Howley.
Chuck was the weak side linebacker. When I saw him first move, it's like, my God, I can't believe that.
He was outstanding and just a great football player and one of so many on that team.
I always have enjoyed and admired Chuck. He was just an incredible player.
Chuck was probably one of the faster guys on the team. He could run with most of the receivers back then.
Well, he would turn the season around because he was so confident in his performance.
I go back to the strong safety comparison.
Chuck Howley turns it over to the Cowboys.
He could have lined up there. He was a little stockier than your average strong safety, but Howley could have played defensive end.
This is Howley, the linebacker.
The fact that Tom Landry said in public that Chuck Howley may have been the very best linebacker he's ever seen in his life is a really big statement, because Tom did not praise people unless they were professional, unless he had, they met his standards, and Howley exceeded his standards.
I don't know of anyone that's more deserving than Chuck Howley. Not only was he a great pro, he's a great team man, but more important than that, he was a great person. And he did probably as much as anybody in helping Dallas build a franchise. So my congratulations to Chuck and his family today. Thank you.
Howley was a great, great player. How does Pittsburgh get all of these Hall of Famers and leaving our guys out?
Players who were inducted would tell him, Chuck, it's just a matter of time. You're going to make it. You're going to get in. And I think he just kind of stopped believing him to a point. But I think in his heart, I think he always held out hope that at some point he would make it in.
It was very frustrating. And we kept saying, even when the family would get together, why? Nobody could tell us why.
Of course, there was always this feeling and wheeling, why isn't Chuck Howley in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? And his credentials are Hall of Fame credentials.
12-yard line, Chuck Howley.
So when I looked at that list, a couple names jumped out at me. Everybody's got Pro Bowls, and there are Defensive Players of the Years and MVPs. But you look at the All-Pros. There are only 5 guys in that list of 100 that have 5 All-Pros, and Chuck Howley was one of them. Chuck Howley, in my eyes, was a glaring oversight.
I thank the Cowboy organization very deeply. The coaches who put up with me for 13 years and made me the professional that I was.
I just hope that, everyone else will realize what a great man he is.
He last put on the pads as a Dallas Cowboy 50 years ago. So there's a whole generations of people here, 60 years and younger, that don't know anything about Chuck Howley.
growing up in Warwood was wonderful. My mom and dad were both born in Wheeling. Dad was born in South Wheeling. Mom was born right there in the Warwood area. And we were a family of 5, 4 boys and me.
He grew up on North 21st Street in Warwood, which is like the center of the area. And it was close walking distance of Garden Park, which is, and right across the street from Corpus Christi grade school and church where he went, where he attended.
Warwood, growing up in Warwood had a lot of things for kids to do. And all we did, we'd come up here, everybody went every place on a bike. Everybody had a bike.
It was a good town, you know, we didn't have any trouble. It was the school itself was a small school.
We were older boys in 5th grade. We were older boys, and we had this real strict nun, and Sister Augusta. I never forgot her. You won't forget her if you had her. With strict nuns, and that was a good start for Chuck, right there.
We were very close to the Howleys since my mom and his mom were sisters.
There were family dinners, but what I remember the most is when we went on family picnics. And you know, all the big kids would be playing volleyball or playing games like that, and all us little kids Chuck always allowed us to come in and play.
He had a nickname that a lot of people don't know, a childhood nickname that his father gave him, called him Bunny. As a matter of fact, some of his family members and friends from back in the day still call him Bunny.
So I think it was a family name. It was just a term of endearment. The whole time I was growing up, he was Bunny to me. I had a hard time calling him Chuck, and I still do.
His father realized how fast he was when he was young, and he started to call him Bunny after, of course, the speed of a rabbit. So he began to call him Bunny, and that pretty much stuck with the entire family. Everyone began to call him Bunny in the family.
He enrolled at Wheeling Central Catholic High School because he went to Corpus Christi grade school and church there. He went to Central his first 2 years and then came back and went to Warwood to public school his last 2 years.
I think his reasoning behind that was he wanted to play football. It wasn't that he didn't make the team at Central High, but there was some conflict about there weren't enough uniforms to go around, so they gave it to the older guys. So he got permission from my parents to move up to Warwood.
So Chuck, on kickoffs, especially his Philadelphia game, we was beating him pretty good. And he said, we're going to bet a milkshake on this. And I said, okay. So we bet a milkshake on who'd get the tack on the kickoff. He always won.
They have a big all-star football game. And the High All-Stars play the West Virginia All-Stars. And West Virginia won a game 13-0 with Chuck as one of the standout defensive players, shut out the Ohio side.
The last time we played together was the All-Star game in Ohio and West Virginia. And Ohio was big favorites that year. And we beat them. Chuck had a real big game there, too.
That's where WVU sort of opened their eyes to recruit him when they saw him, because of the teams he played on at Warwood were just, 500 type teams. So when they saw him play that well in that Ohio West Virginia All-Star game, they recruited him, and as you say, the rest is history.
Thank God I was on the same team usually, because he was good.
Welcome to the campus of West Virginia University. May we offer you a glimpse into the campus life of West Virginia University with some of the highlights that make up the eventful moments and fond memories of every college man and woman.
From what I understand from people that I've talked to is that he wasn't planning on going to school at all. He wasn't planning on going to college, and then everybody kind of went on to to school, and he thought he'd give it a try, but he didn't have the money to go. So West Virginia offered to give him a scholarship, and so he went to West Virginia and, of course, excelled there.
He lettered in track, wrestling, gymnastics, and swimming, along with all his football. Now that's, to me, you don't see that today. You don't see a single person play that many sports and letter in that many sports. But that showed the determination and the upbringing that he had.
In college, one of the things I always remembered was people telling me that he is the only college athlete in the history of West Virginia University to letter in 5 varsity sports. And no one has ever done that since then.
Now in track, of course, as I say, he was fast for his size. He was clocked in the 100-yard dash once in 10.1 seconds. Now that's a 220-pound lineman.
Well, the thing that really surprised me was gymnastics, but that was one of the things he lettered in, was gymnastics. And then diving, he did diving, and that was something that was a little bit surprising as well, because we've always known him as a football player.
When he was a youngster, the Wheeling YMCA had a gymnastics exhibition team that went around and gave exhibitions, and he was a trampolinist. So he went out for the gymnastics squad at West Virginia University and lettered in gymnastics.
Man, he was really good, like a natural. He'd go high and flip. It was like a natural thing for him.
And of course that led to him to diving for swimming. So he became a really good diver.
And he'd go to Ogilvy Park with a high dive, and when they got to know him, and they'd say, "Let no one go in the water until he's done."
One of the stories was that he was trying to impress a girl who later turned out to be my mom, and he went off the high dive, and he wasn't really paying attention, and he landed on the side of his head and blew out his eardrum.
I used to get down and watch him dive because he would dive off that board like he owned it.
They had a high diving board, and he was a familiar figure doing all these twists and turns and everything else off the high dive, and guess what? At West Virginia University, he won the 1-meter Southern Conference Diving Championship as a member of the swimming team.
We had 8 years difference in age, and therefore, no, I didn't really realize how great he was of a football player until he began to play for West Virginia University. I would listen to all the games on the radio.
He started out, he was a left guard as a sophomore, second team All-Southern Conference, honorable mention All-America. They had a problem at center his junior year. They moved him to starting center as a junior. And as a senior, they moved him to right guard, wherever they needed help. But he was also a backup punter, place kicker, and kickoff guy. And here he was playing both ways, you know, and on special teams and everything else. So, of course, he was All-Southern Conference first team his last 2 years and third team All-American as a senior. And he won the Jacobs Trophy as a senior. That's the top blocker in the Southern Conference.
67 years ago, 1956, I attracted sugar diabetes. I was 12 years old. And at that particular time, almost exactly, Chuck was invited to play in the College All-Star Shriners game in Kezar Stadium in San Francisco. A few days later, I'm at Wheeling Hospital, newly diagnosed with diabetes, and in comes my cousin, Chuck Howley, with this jersey. And so I wore it proudly. So that's my story, okay? My cousin, Chuck Howley.
Of course, he was the #1 draft choice of Chicago Bears, coming out of WVU.
We all know he was the 7th overall pick of a draft, which tells you right away, this is a great player.
I don't think any of us were expecting the Bears.
When you get a guy that's that size back then, which is good size, and have that kind of sprinter type speed, I mean, that you're gonna find a spot for him in professional football, I'm sure.
He respected and loved George Halas. I mean, that man he really spoke highly of him and really appreciated the opportunity he had to play for him.
So the Bears drafted him in the first round, and he played as a rookie, and he was pretty good. And then early the next year, back then they played 6 preseason games and called them exhibitions, he blew out his knee.
It was awful. He was so wrapped up in what he was doing. He loved playing professional football.
He played a year and a half with them, then got a serious leg injury and came back home. And that's when he bought a Sunoco gas station in the Fulton area, which is a different part of Wheeling.
As a student in college, I worked at the gas station for him. He was convinced that he couldn't play again.
He was very realistic. He had a family to support, and he would do whatever he had to do to take care of them. So he had the opportunity to get the gas station, and that's what it was.
At the time, they played alumni games at West Virginia, where all the alumni football players would come in and play a game against the college team, the university team. And he decided to do that. So it was a test on his knee.
And he wanted to really test his knee in that alumni game. And when he found that he could still compete, he said, well, I'm going to give it what I got, you know.
And so Gil works a deal with the Bears. Back then the draft's like 18 rounds. Gave 2 and some low pick and a player nobody's ever heard of. And so Chuck comes in, same year Bob Lilly was the first pick, and they helped really start the Doomsday Defense.
One of the great original Cowboys.
They didn't think he would ever come back, George Halas.
You know, he didn't want to go out, you know, that way. He didn't want to finish his football career, his athletic career that way. So I think he wanted to go out on his own terms, not on being injured or whatever.
He knew he could make it. You could just hear it when he was talking. He said, I know I can do this. And he did it. That's just who he is.
If he had never played again, there's no doubt in people's minds he would own gas stations, filling stations as they were called then, all over West Virginia and maybe that part of the country, because that's just the way he was.
He has a copy of his first paycheck from that Sunoco business he ran, just to remind him of his roots. You know, he was making a lot more money later on, of course, but he wanted to remind himself that he came from running a gas station to a professional football player.
Linebacker Chuck Howley is on the lookout for the look-in pass. Howley swipes Johnson's toss and returns to the Cards 15.
He came my rookie year, and he came out. We had to be there a week early, so we had an extra week of 2-a-days. Chuck was very quiet, and I think he was really just trying to feel if he was healed and if he could actually come back and all that. And so by the end of 3 weeks of 2-a-days, he was pretty confident that he could play again. Coming back, and that's what Cowboys needed, was to get a veteran that'll settle in a position.
He was an athlete. He was an athlete. Mel Renfro and all those guys were athletes, and they were good at different sports, and that gave him the ability to adjust.
Cornerback Warren Livingston corrals him. Chuck Howley collects the football and watches tracks.
But he started out as a strong side linebacker, and then ultimately Coach Landry moved him to weak side, and that's where he shined.
The flex defense was pretty complicated, especially for a young, rookie and second-year man. So I think we all had a little problem, but he gradually moved in on that.
The Doomsday Defense was sensational. It's fascinating. There were only a couple of times during the 6 years I was there where I could remember somebody out-rushing me because, I mean, you know, they were just so good.
We didn't mind going off the field if our defense was going on.
You know, the weak side linebacker has a little zone on certain defenses. And Chuck was quick enough and fast enough that if he was in the middle of his zone and a receiver was on the outside, he could get over there and make an interception. Back then, because of the way Landry played him in a 4-3, you know, he dropped into coverage a lot. He didn't have a lot of sacks. Most he ever had was 6.5. But with his speed and quickness, if Landry wanted him to rush off the edge, there's no telling how many sacks we would have had.
Chuck was really good at playing outside of the system and coming in and making the plays regardless of whatever was happening.
They let him freelance. The only guy on the team, you know, if it was Cole, you know, what are you doing here? You know, you're supposed to be over here. But for him, it's like, no, they would let him do it because half the time, at least over half the time, he was right.
Anyway, Leroy mentioned to me one day, he said, you know, I don't think Chuck really knows what defense we're in, but he said, but he always knows where the ball is. And he made a lot of plays.
It was hard to tell where he's going to be at times.
Coach Landry said, you know, there are some players that you just have to give latitude to, and he said Chuck Howley was one of them, and he said Bob Liddy got by with it too.
Well, he's a unique guy that is kind of a quiet guy that kind of hangs to himself a little bit, and he's also got kind of the disposition that you got to make sure you get him at the right time and get him in the right moment.
Yeah, in training camp, you know, I'm left in and he playing next to me. And yeah, I was there and I was a little confused, and I said, do I go in on this without? And he says, I don't care what you do, just stay out of my way. It's like, welcome to the NFL.
Chuck took care of me, except when it came scrimmage time. He was an outside linebacker and I played tight end. And of course we'd have to block on him. I would have to block on him once in a while. He'd take it out on me a little bit.
I mean, even in practice, you know, he could make you, you know, you were responsible, so let's say for a blitz. And, you know, you'd think that he was dropping back, and as soon as you take a step, he'd delay blitz or whatever.
I think, you know, some of the guys are gifted with just natural instincts of how to get up and come up and make the big play and know how to do it and what angle to hit on and everything. And Chuck was one of those guys.
Well, he'd give you a fake read, and you know, like he was dropping into what we call the zone, and then he'd drop straight back, and so you'd be in your pattern, and you know, you'd run right into him.
He was hard-hitting, smart, intelligent, paid attention to the game. That's important. And he was dependable. Dependable is probably the best thing I can say about him.
He liked to win. He was a winner.
A record crowd for the Super Bowl today, 80,000. And so we'll watch Dallas now go to the attack. And Baltimore will put the ball in play. Johnny Unitas steps him down. Unitas looking, flips it, and it is intercepted by Chuck Howley.
During that Super Bowl V, he knew instinctively how to intercept those balls, where to go, and intercepted 2 passes, and that's the freewheeling style that he had on his own. You know, that's why they let him do the things that he did, because he'd make the plays.
5, he fumbled! Chuck Howley hits the jar and the ball loose.
Safety don't blitz work like a charm. Way to hustle, that's the big thing. Way to hustle.
And what he would do is fool you. I mean, you know, imagine against Unitas and Earl Morrall, 2 established quarterbacks. Chuck would make them think he was going to do something, and then suddenly,
on third down,
he'd give them a false look, and that's how he got his interceptions.
Is intercepted, and it's intercepted there by Chuck Howley. That's his second interception.
There were some controversial plays at the end, and including a fumble that was Dave Manders, the center, came up with the ball, and Jack Fetty, the head linesman, pointed to Baltimore's way.
He fumbled right at the goal line. Dallas is unhappy now.
And we recovered the ball. Billy Ray Smith, who was a big defensive tackle, he started jumping up, said, "Our ball, we got it, we got it." And the referee blew his whistle and gave them the ball.
They know they didn't recover that fumble, but it was, even on the replays, it's really hard to do that. But if we had been able to score on that, we would have been up 20-6. You have the lead the whole game against Baltimore, and then you end up losing in the last second. Those are the hardest games to accept.
Oh, it's heartbreaking.
I remember that Chuck Howley got the Super Bowl award. Obviously, we were devastated the Cowboys didn't win, but that was some consolation, and he, of course, played an incredible game.
Up until that point, nobody had ever gotten an MVP on a losing team, and nobody has yet. So we weren't surprised because he was making so many plays.
When you look at that game, he was the outstanding player, offense or defense, winning team, losing team.
We teased him about it a little bit. We didn't tease him. We just said, "Mr. MVP," and he laughed. But I never did even see it. We've been over to his house many times.
He had one of the best games of his career in Super Bowl V. I think he felt bad, though, because it was an individual award for him, but it was a team effort.
They gave him a cowboy blue Dodge Charger, and he brought it home, and I was just amazed with that car. I was like, "Oh my God, Dad, you've got to keep that car." I wanted that to be my car when I turned 16. The next day, the car was gone, and in its place was a hideous station wagon with wood paneling, and I was just crushed. I was like, "What have you done?"
What happened to us was we just were so sick, and then went to the party, after the Super Bowl, and after about an hour, we started looking back and say, "Hey, we got here." It's like, well, we're going to make a commitment to go back and win it next year.
Super Bowl VI just seconds away from getting underway. Tulane Stadium doesn't have an empty seat.
It was finally decided that we were going to win. We'd said that we would win. We were pretty confident. Not cocky, just confident.
First down, Dallas 46.
There's nothing like winning the Super Bowl.
Zonka fumble.
It's just all the work
Looks like Dallas.
that you put in and finally comes to fruition.
He's down in Bob Lilly has him.
Miami had, I think they had 4 or 5 Hall of Famers on that team, and they scored 3 points against us.
Fine defensive effort by Cornell Green.
We shut down completely Miami and Paul Warfield. That was a great Super Bowl win for us.
I watched it 2 or 3 times, and I'm thinking, I think maybe I ought to pick Howley again. Roger had a great game, but Chuck set up 2 touchdowns.
3rd and 4. This is Howley, the linebacker. Out of bounds at the 42-yard line, short of a first down.
He had a great game. He had an outstanding game.
He probably was the MVP of that game. Roger Staubach got it with 119 yards passing. That was a defensive Super Bowl victory. The Cowboys were the only team in the first 52 years of the game to hold the opposition without a touchdown.
He had an interception return, I believe, 40-something yards. It set up a touchdown. Then he had a fumble recovery, set up a field goal. And that's the thing about Chuck. He was a big play guy who made big plays in big games. It's undeniable.
Roger won it, deservedly. But Chuck, he was always in the conversation, wasn't he? Always.
Chuck, in the meantime, he started working for Flake Uniform Sales out of Wichita Falls. He was their rep here in Dallas. And then he built the cleaners over in Lake Highlands, dry cleaners.
And he come in with about 5 minutes to go before he had to be out on the practice field.
Chuck would come to the morning meetings with his coat and tie and sit in the morning meetings with the coat and tie and then leave at lunch to go to his business, Chuck Howley Cleaners.
We used to joke about Chuck and Cornell Green because, you know, that they would take showers and the water wouldn't hit them because they'd get dressed and they were gone.
He went around to all automobile dealers in Fort Worth and Dallas, and he got about 50 or 60% of them to do that. And he was doing better at that than he was making money with the Cowboys.
You know, he inspired me. I saw him come in, you know, after practice, take a shower quickly, you know, get dressed and leave. First one out of the building. And it's like, where are you going? It's like, well, I gotta get back to my business.
You know, as I remember, Charlie Taylor cracked. It was a crackback block. It was a legal block, and he hurt his knee, and he was out.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I mean, back then they didn't have the technology, and I remember him coming home with a giant cast on him. It went from his hip to his toes. That's the way they treated knee injuries at that time.
I just you know, the crackback block, it just depends on where the head is, and it's a decisional call by the referee, and it's an odd thing that he should be complaining about his boys being cracked back on when I'm laying here in bed.
But Chuck came back and rehabbed. I remember him saying, I'm going to rehab until I can, you know, get back to where I was and run, you know, and run a 4.640. And I think he did that, and then he retired.
I think so, Vern. I think I enjoy playing the game, and I enjoy doing it the way, you know, I'm capable of doing it, and this is what I'm trying to do now, to get in shape to perform like I have in past years.
I remember the conversation that he told me he and Landry had. It's like Landry said, well, how about you don't retire and you just be on the taxi squad? I said, well, what does that mean? He goes, well, that means they just call me if they need me. I went, oh, okay.
The entire Cowboy team is gathered there and to witness this induction ceremony of former linebacker Chuck Howley into the Ring of Honor.
I only know of one way to show my appreciation, and it's rather simple. I thank the Cowboy organization for inducting me into the Ring of Honor. I thank very deeply the coaches who put up with me for 13 years and made me the professional that I was. I thank my fellow players who are sitting in the stands today, and the ones that are still out here playing today. And the fans that gave me the encouragement and the urge to make the big plays, because I got this from you people too. Lastly, I got to show a great deal of admiration to my wife Nancy, my son Scott, and my daughter Robin, because it's pretty tough to put up with a professional athlete for 13 years getting ready for each game. Thank you, one and all.
He had a goal about what he wanted to do in football, and he did. And then he had a goal of what he wanted to do in business, and he did.
Of course, the salaries that they were paying back in that era, they weren't very good, and you had to really rely on and be prepared to go into your next life as a businessman. And Chuck did that and did it very well.
Jack Eskridge, when I became the business manager, he thought, what did I think of Howley's truck, you know, number 54, coming in and doing our uniforms? And we were very particular about equipment back then. And I thought it was terrific because it was a perfect fit for him.
Yes, dry cleaning and industrial laundry, and then this place, this office here, he built this office in '78 because he needed patches for the uniforms. So we were the company that handled the embroidery and the patches for his needs.
He was getting ready to sell his business, and he told me, he said, I can't wait. I'm ready to retire. Then he turned around and started another business.
He sold his business to a larger firm, came over here and ran this business till his health started to decline, and then I took over. But yeah, he was involved in the rental laundry for quite a while.
But he was really good at his profession. He was really good.
He was very competitive, not just on the field, but off the field. he had a kind of a laser-like focus, whether it was going to be something he was doing off the field, in the cleaning business, the uniform business, the horse business. He didn't want to just be successful, he wanted to be the best.
Well, I got on the senior committee in 2004. For the longest time, there were 9. Just in the last year, they moved it up to 12. But we look at a list of 15, 16 players and try to pick now it's 3. Once upon a time, it was 1. And that's one of the reasons Chuck was having this difficult time.
I wrote a personal letter to every one of the members of the selection board and asked them to please just look at the film. One gentleman was kind enough to write me back, and that was Mr. McLean from the Houston Chronicle.
And when I saw that Chuck was a finalist, 50 years after he retired, I called the Hall of Fame and said, I would like to present him to the seniors committee. And then if the seniors committee makes you a nominee, the big committee, we just rubber stamp. So I knew if he got a nomination from the seniors committee, he's in the Hall of Fame.
You know, what jumped out at me, and the thing I kept bringing up when his name was there is only one outside linebacker in history had more takeaways than Chuck Howley. That was Jack Ham. He had 53. Chuck had 43. He had 25 picks, 18 fumble recoveries.
He averaged a turnover for every playoff game, and that's hard. You know, some of the greatest players in history had no turnovers in playoffs.
And John did a fantastic job. I really owe John a debt of gratitude because he really went to bat for Dad.
The fact that I grew up watching him, that made it even more special. And the family has been incredible, so appreciative, and that makes it even more rewarding.
It hadn't been announced, and the Hall of Fame asked a few of the players that played with Chuck, myself, Charlie, Leroy, Mel Renfro, Bob Lilly, to go over to his house and tell him that he had made the Hall of Fame.
Roger has something he wants to share with your dad.
You are in the Hall of Fame.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
We wanted Dad to be surrounded by his old teammates because we wanted him to feel comfortable and to enjoy the moment.
So then Scott called me and asked me if I wanted to come to his dad's house because they were going to let him know the NFL Films was going to film the Hall of Fame, coming to tell him that he was in the Hall of Fame.
He told me that he'd been working to get Chuck Howley in the Hall of Fame for years, and it finally was going to happen. Did I want to go to Dallas and watch NFL films and the NFL come in and tell Chuck he'd made the Hall of Fame, that a lot of ex-Cowboy players would be there? Well, that's the dream come true for somebody like me.
So anyway, we were all sitting by him and patting him on the back and shaking his hand, and he wanted to shake hands. That's one thing, and I know he was trying to say, "Oh, I made it. I know it," but anyway, we're very proud of him.
It was quite a moment, and to be able to share that just as a fly on the wall was something, again, I'll never forget.
Yeah. It's a happy day, Chuck. You are in right now.
When a player's in the Hall of Fame, it's more about his family. You know, he was great, we know that. And it's more about the family and the celebration of your father, your husband, your son, whatever. And I think that's the part that's going to be great for the Howley family.
When he became honoree for the Hall of Fame, the people here just went crazy. They've initiated a movement to rename Garden Park over there, the Chuck Howley Field.
The field at Garden Park in Warwood is now named Chuck Howley Field at Garden Park.
Not only is this a great honor and recognition for everything that Chuck has accomplished, but this is also an inspiring message, I think, for children, for generations to come. They're going to be able to play on Chuck Howley Field, and they're going to learn that Chuck Howley, grew up in Wheeling, in Ohio Valley, in the neighborhood of Warwood.
Chuck Howley, I believe, is the most honored athlete to come out of the city of Wheeling, and this latest honor just sort of is the icing on the cake. So we're going to put his name, and they're going to have a nice archway or whatever with his name on it to go to the field. at Garden Park where he practiced, where he grew up, and designate his birthday, June 28th, as Chuck Howley Day in Wheeling.
I was as happy as could be. You know, he couldn't be a better person. In fact, it's a shame it didn't happen before, but it did happen, so that's the good thing about it.
I hope they remember him as the athlete that he was. I hope they remember him as the man who spoke with his actions and not his words.
A good man. If I had to put it in 2 words, a good man.
I mean, he had a great career. He's a Hall of Famer. He knew he was a Hall of Fame player. A lot of people knew he was a Hall of Fame player, and now he is a Hall of Fame player, and that's all that matters.
Green. Looks good. So wow. Finally made
it. Since Dad can't be here today, I have a special request for all of you out there. I'd like to ask that we all give Dad a shout out. And so on the count of 3, we're gonna yell, "Hello, Chuck." Okay, here goes. 1, 2, 3. Hello, Chuck! Thank you very much.
Dallas Cowboys Deep Blue was presented by Pepsi Zero Sugar, made for Cowboys watching.